personally believe that, 8 years ago, that video would have been shared as widely as it was. I think that people would have seen that as crazy talk. Like, what do you mean, black? Fight power with power. We ain't got no power. What are you doing? What are you talking about, boy? You gonna get us in trouble, right? This sort of shift in the thinking of black folks, and also that support, courageous support for HBCUs. A lot of people ask this, and I'm sure you guys talk about this in the chat, because I know you'd love to know about this as well. A lot of people wonder, what keeps prime black athletes from going to HBCUs? It almost seems like a weird, cart leading the horse situation where the black schools can't get the best black athletes. In the non-black schools, you look at schools like USC, UCLA, as a person from academia, I remember looking at their hiring record and saying, man, they've got a bunch of departments that have never hired a black person. It seems like the way to get into campus is to dribble basketball, throw a football. But if you're there to do biology, or if you're doing something other than that, there's no room for you. But yet they have the prime black athletes. What is the barrier keeping our best athletes from going to the HBCUs?
Well, I want to address a few things you said. First of all, the fight power with power. I feel like, you notice I began by saying, instead of crying and complaining and begging, a lot of times our MO in terms of getting equality and justice is honestly just kind of to beg and hope that white people do the right thing. We're deserving of, right? We built the country. There's no question about it. We deserve reparations. We deserve equality and justice. No question about it, okay? But we're just in a position typically of hoping and praying, please do the right thing and give it to us. And I'm saying I understand that, but we do have some power, some things that we can use ourselves to get the things we want. I think there's the vote, which is, I think, limited, but there is that. I also think our athletic dominance and well, let me go to the second one. There's a vote. Secondly, I would say consumerism. You always have the power of the boycott. And then in certain industries, sneakers, attendance at movies, we have an inordinate amount, and we spend an inordinate amount of our income on consumer products. So our consumerism could be used as a weapon to gain equality. We saw that was the case in the civil rights movement with the bus boycott and so on and so forth. If we boycotted certain things, we would be able to use that as a weapon to get what we want. And then our third weapon, if you will, in fighting for justice and equality, I believe, is our dominance of athletics and entertainment, but specifically athletics. And I've said this, African-American athletes are the most well-connected. They're the wealthiest and the richest. If you look at Forbes' top 10 list of, wealthiest African-Americans, all but probably one of them are related to sports or entertainment. And they're the most beloved and they're the most irreplaceable Black people in America, if not in the world. And so, like, you can find a white or a journalist of another race to do what I do, or what you can find a white accountant to replace a Black one, a white lawyer to replace a Black lawyer. You can't find, and we haven't seen it, a white LeBron James, a white Adrian Peterson, or somebody like that, So these guys are irreplaceable, and that gives them power. And so that's what I'm really getting at is we need, now everybody's free to do what they want, and if you don't want to share your money, spend your money a certain way, that's on you. But sometimes I get tired of us just complaining about our situation, but then those of us who are in positions to really do something about it don't do anything. It's just like we want, whites to just give us, help us, do this for us, lead us, guide us, instead of taking some initiative and doing it for ourselves. Yes, we should still fight on that front as well, and getting them to do what's right, but we need to do some things ourselves. And so I think our athletes, I'll give you an example. What if I'm a superstar black athlete and McDonald's or Coca-Cola or some giant company, Adidas, wants me to endorse their product? What about, okay, you want me to endorse your company. What percentage of your management is African American? Oh, only 4%. Okay, we're 12% of the population, 13% of the population. I would like to get that management number up to 13%. So let's say in my contract, within 5 years, I want it up to 13%. You know, it can incrementally grow. You say you can't find qualified African Americans. Okay, well, let's start a management trainee program where you hire some out of college and you train them to become management, and then they feed into those positions. I mean, that's the type, if I'm that great, then they want me. That's some type of stipulation I could put. Even what you said with the universities. If a big time university wants me to go there, wow, only 3% of your faculty is African American. I don't like that. I want to see more black professors in biology and finance. You know, that's the power. I believe UCLA is 2 or 3% African American. I think it's 2.5%, but it's around that number.
The student body, or you mean in faculty?
The student body. And so that's just one example of the power that I think our athletes, and to a lesser extent our entertainers, have in this country. And if we would use it, I think we could help ourselves instead of just always being in the position of begging someone else to do it. Answer the second part as far as why our best athletes are going to the white universities. Look, obviously they have the better facilities. They are on the national television, and, you know, they're the ones that are put out there and, you know, as the greatest programs. So I think when I call for African-American athletes to go to HBCUs, I get it. I think it would have to be somewhat of a process. So I think in basketball is a little different, but say football. The athletic facilities at Grambling, the football facilities, or FAMU compared to Florida State or LSU, it's not even close, you know, to what, you know, it's not even in the same atmosphere as far as Grambling's facilities versus Florida State's. And so that is why a lot of athletes will go, you know, and these are young men, you know, they're drawn, you know, they're 18 years old, so they want to go to the big, you know, school with the best facilities. And I understand that, I get it. But that is one of the reasons that you see a lot, not to mention on national television, in the national rankings, and, you know, you just get much more publicity. That's why I think there will have to be a process to go forward for our best athletes to attend the HBCUs. I think one of the first steps would be I think initially, as you mentioned, all the people that are pushing out the video and replaying the video, reposting the video that I made, you really would need to get a group, a board or panel, if you will, of influential African Americans to begin pushing this agenda. Okay, that'd be number one. It's some athletes, some entertainers, some, you know, economists, some public figures, just people in various realms, powerful African Americans, to push this agenda, number one. Number two, once you identify African American institutions that you would want to give to the HBCUs, look, we've seen it in the news. Some of our HBCUs financially, and a lot of it probably because they don't have the funds, but they would need to go through some type of financial audit, you know, and make sure and have open accounting for these donations. I think, and the athletes would be able to earmark it to where they wanted it to go, so it doesn't get lost. One of the people you mentioned reached out to me, and they were very familiar with the workings of an HBCU, one in particular. I won't mention the name, but one famous celebrity wanted to donate $2 million to the institution, but he wanted open accounting with his money so he could know where it was going. The institution rejected it because they didn't want the open accounting. So I think before I ask athletes to give millions of dollars to an institution, I would want to make sure that that money is going to be used the way they want it to be used. So I think a financial audit, open accounting would have to be in place. And then you have to get our African-American athletes to make these donations to the HBCUs. So we've seen Carmelo Anthony at Syracuse. I think he gave $1 million to help them build a new athletic facility. Russell Westbrook gave $2 million to UCLA. I believe Kevin Durant gave $3 million, I believe it was, to Texas, where he stayed for a year, probably only went to classes for a semester. Dr. Dre, let's get into entertainment. He and Jimmy Iovine gave, $70 million to USC, 35 each, I assume. And I'm not saying you can't donate to these, predominantly white institutions as they're known, but at the very least, you could give some as well to HBCUs, at the very least, if not just making the donation to HBCUs. Because boys, having worked at Syracuse, they don't need that money.
They do not need
down. Oh, that's like me giving you a quarter or $1. You know what I mean? They don't need that. But the HBCUs need it. And if we got athletes to make multi-million-dollar donations to the HBCUs, first of all, and I'm saying this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, forget the sports. Imagine how that money could be used to build up the academic programs and aspects of the school. And it could be used to build up the athletic facilities, and pay the coaches more, make the dormitories better, the locker rooms, the facilities. Then an LSU wouldn't have that facility advantage over a Southern, or over a Prairie View. And then you would have a great chance of getting the athletes there. And that's not even to mention, Boyce, think about if the best athletes went to these HBCUs. This is not 1955. So those HBCUs would be in the NCAA tournament in March Madness. They would be, playing in the major bowl games, in college football. And all the television, they would be on national television on a weekly basis. All that money you generated would be able to go toward those institutions. And you could lift them up, a Howard, a Morehouse, a Hampton, which are already great schools. They could become really upper echelon, not just black schools, but schools, colleges, period, in America. So, and I think it could be done. There was nothing I said that was unrealistic. It's just a matter of, do we, want to do it? Do we have the determination, the fortitude to come together and do it? Or do we just want to continue to, please give us this, please, you should do this, and beg and complain and all that?
Man, you brought up I started getting a nervous twitch when you start talking about just all the money that the athletes will give to these institutions that don't need it. And if you've seen the budgets in terms of how much money, I mean, these schools they're like the Pablo Escobars of education. Like, remember how they said Pablo lost $2 billion a year because the money would get eaten by the rats. He had so much money, he didn't know where to keep it. He'd have rooms with 100 stacks to the ceiling. That's what these universities have become. They're like the Pablo Escobars. They got so much money, they don't know what to do with. They're nonprofits, so they have to spend it. That's why they're actually part of the gentrification process. A lot of these schools, they're right in black neighborhoods, like the Yales and Syracuse and other, et cetera. And they're buying entire blocks of black neighborhoods because they're like, we got all this cash. And, a lot of it from y'all student loans that a lot of half of all black college graduates can't even repay their student loans, but that money is going to these universities, which is impacting black wealth, right? The athletes are $1 trillion commodity, $1 trillion asset coming out of the community. A lot of that trillions going, to institutions that don't even want us there. Maybe, it definitely as athletes, maybe as students, definitely not as the primary beneficiaries of the vast systems that they have in place, right? And Dr. Dre, yeah, every time I go to South Central, I'm kind of prepared for a confrontation because I know Dr. Dre was very pissed off when I wrote an article about what he did when he gave all that money to USC. I didn't mean to be mean to the brother, you know, and I talked to some people that work with him, and one of my friends actually got cut off from him. He said, man, Dre saw your article. He saw that I shared it on Facebook. Man, he blocked me on Facebook, and I felt bad about that because I didn't want him to feel bad for what he was doing, but it was like, come on, man, you could do so much more. Do you know USC, the amount of money you gave them, they spend that much money in a couple of weeks. You know, like that's like their extra loose change money. You know, but you give that money, even a fraction of that to an HBCU, you're educating tens of thousands of your own people over the next 100 years. I mean, just if you can't even think about the community, think about yourself. That's a massive legacy, you know, that you can leave. Name the building after your daughter, and this building is educating all these people, man. And I just think that just shifting that thinking, that's what I love about your video, because I know there's so many people in the sports space